Okay, so thanks so much, Sally, for all that you do in the community. I really appreciate it. We appreciate your diligence and all the work that you do from now and moving forward into our future. So thank you so much. As always, we begin all things by acknowledging our original, acknowledge the original stewards of the lands, the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, Sally, if you can please just introduce yourself and tell us about the remarkable work that you're doing currently.
I just add, I'm delighted to be here. To me, SETC is one of the most important organizations around right now, and I'm very proud to be partnering and um, working to reach goals together. Yeah, so I'm
That's
very happy
right.
to be here. Um,
Amazing.
what we are, so I'm Sally Miller. I'm the executive director of the Fair Finance Fund. And in sort of summary of my background, I've worked for about 30 years in local food and agriculture, with a particular sort of focus on social impact and cooperation. The Fair Finance Fund was developed because the organizations that I've worked with, research that I've done with farmers, over and over again, I was hearing these good farmers who are the future of food sovereignty in Canada were not getting access to the capital they needed. So we started the Fair Finance Fund in 2019. So we're a nonprofit social finance fund. We provide loans and mentorship services to local food and farm enterprises across Ontario. And all of our clients, there's about over 40 of them now. They all value strong local food systems, local economies, and a healthy planet. And then we have developed about 4 million in assets under management of capital. So we're pretty small still. And that came from a combination of individual investors, foundations, institutional investors, and also some non-repayable contributions. So that's in a nutshell.
Amazing. Amazing. Very powerful. And can you just share a little bit of your incredible background in the food and farming ecosystems of Canada?
Uh, yeah. So I came to Canada in 1996 after running an organic farmers co-op in upstate New York for a while, and um, came up here and started working in sustainable food and agriculture up here. Give you my background, which is completely not aligned with that. I have a doctorate in anthropology, and I did field research in Nepal focused on gossip and storytelling. So in the context of marriage alliances. But I always say that was actually, marriage alliances are related to community development and organizing. So it was sort of a reasonable background then for me to get into this incredible work. And I really got into the local food work for economic development reasons, and sort of seeing that if we take ownership of food production and it's aligned with communities and what communities need, and there's governance and ownership from local communities, then we end up with a very strong food system. And when I came up to Canada, it seemed to me that we had let a lot of that go. We were not really controlling the food system. We were very dependent on import mostly from the US, from other places too. And the food system was not representative, particularly in the ownership and management side of Black farmers, Black food entrepreneurs, Indigenous entrepreneurs. So there was a real social justice gap that needed to be addressed. So I sort of take my experience in cooperatives. I've done a lot of co-op development and looking at what I believe is the strongest way to form a business and to build an economy, which is to make sure that the stakeholders have a say in what happens.
Yes, that's so powerful for each individual who's actively in that, to who's really doing the work and see the work, it manifests for them in an economic way. So that's amazing. Can you articulate your mission and vision for us?
The overall mission and vision of the Fair Finance Fund is that we provide affordable loans and mentorship services to local food and farm enterprises that value strong local food systems, local economies, and a healthy planet. I should mention in this, I don't want to keep my answers too long, but I think I should mention, and you can do editing around this, but the key project that we're working closely with SETC on is called Inclusive Prosperity. And it's the next step for the Fair Finance Fund. And this is a fund which will develop access to farmland for BIPOC farmers, particularly Black farmers, with tenure security and the possibility for equity. So not just so this is sort of the immediate problem that we're dealing with. So Fair Finance Fund has done great, really important steps in local food and farming, but there's a significant issue for a fairly important large community of Black farmers in Canada, which is that without intergenerational wealth, they and because of racial bias in lending, they are not getting access to the land they need, and they're doing sort of extraordinary, the people that I've talked to, just sort of extraordinary things where they're having to move from one piece of land to another. They don't have tenure security. They're not going to invest in perennials and infrastructure because they don't even know if they're going to be there the next year. And so this is crazy to ask the future food producers of Canada to be doing this. So Inclusive Prosperity is probably a second fund from Fair Finance Fund looking specifically at that problem.
That's so amazing because a few years ago I was a part of the Black Farmers Collective with
Oh,
couple,
really?
yeah, Jackie and
I
Noel,
know
many
Jackie and
many.
Noel. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay, so there you go. So definitely hits close to home when we first started under a big tree at
Downsview.
yes, at the Black Farm there,
Yeah.
Black Creek Farm, right?
Oh, at Black
Yes.
Creek first. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, that's where all the brain, the vision, the internal in the brain, be like, okay, we got to do this, So that's what
Hmm.
under a big tree. So I'll never forget that moment, and it's with me for the rest of my life. So this really hits home. So I really appreciate you and the Fair Finance Fund for doing this.
Yeah.
Um,
Black Creek is one of the key examples of just sort of extraordinary work.
yes, work. Hmm.
And what you can do with urban farming when you have as much as 8 acres and you keep that focus on equity and justice.
Right.
That's so important as an example. The and there have been some other examples because they're on public land. So there have been
Mhm.
examples like that. And I would say I believe in the right to food, which means to me that farmers have the right to get access to land, and they shouldn't have to be competing with housing developers to get land. So the use
That's
of
right.
public land to solve this problem, great. We should do
That's
more of
right.
that. But we also have to think about, how we can get land, keep it in farming, keep it affordable.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Otherwise we'll completely lose control of our food system. We don't want
Absolutely.
that.
Food, clothing, and shelter. I think those are the three main, right? So we can't
Right.
do one. To me, it's like do one without the other, right?
Yeah, yeah. And we're looking at double-digit hunger now, which
Mm,
was true before the pandemic, but gotten much worse. And it's hitting uh communities that are underserved more.
that's it.
So
That's
we
right.
we've just in a few short years exacerbated what was already an awful situation.
So true. So true.
You can see it riles me up.
Oh yes. Oh man, I tell you. Likewise. So I mean this goes without saying, but how important is social finance in the work?
Well, for the reasons that I've given, which is that we need to extract the issues of food and eating from the market economy. I think then the social finance is finance which recognizes that and may reduce, is not just focused on what an investors need, want, expect, but actually goes from the social change that we want to see and then builds a capital mechanism from there. And this is actually a really giant, it's like it's bigger than the Titanic trying to change this direction. So much in our economy is really built up on what investors are willing to do. And I want to start from what the stakeholders need.
Exactly. Exactly. Amazing. And what inspires you the most about your work?
Uh, you know, I had a brief foray into renewable energy, and I came running back to food and agriculture. And the reason is there's several reasons. That it's extraordinary to be involved with things that are growing. Like it's an inspiration. I have a garden, I grow food, and then just the sort of urgency of what I talked about earlier, being in a country like Canada with double-digit hunger is insane, um, and unacceptable, and we should be ashamed of ourselves. Um, but it's also the positive side of that is that some of the most extraordinary people I've met, the innovators, the creative thinkers, the artists, are farmers. So I keep coming back to just think these are just sort of amazing people that if we just stop putting up so many barriers, they're going to do amazing, incredible work. And they have the passion to do it, and they're working through so many challenges just to do that commitment. Like I just don't know that many other careers where people have that kind of dedication. So
I'm, I'm telling you, because like you said, it's like an art skill, but at the same time, it's such an important art skill because you're feeding your community, you're feeding the world, you're feeding your family, and to get nutritious food. And why wouldn't that be top priority, you know, in
mhm.
these forms of conversations governmentally? Right?
So
For sure.
I would add uh just also that I think part of the inspiration right now is that so there's lots going on in social finance, lots of
Hmm.
interesting things. There are also some people who are really kind of pushing the envelope and the definition. So there's some social finance which is still asset based. It might be buildings or renewable energy, something like that, which actually quite reduces the risk for investors. But there's other stuff going on, which is really addressing the social change we need to see happen. And that's things like Kaleidoscope in New Brunswick, Farm Works in Nova Scotia, Raven Capital, of course, Propel Impact. So I turn, and I think we all should, as the social finance is developing, we have the federal fund, and it's a very exciting moment. I think it's good to look at these people who are going, social finance is great, and how can we make it even better?
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's my
Exactly.
inspiration. I sort of keep looking back at that and going, okay. And there's the ones in the US that have sort of a very different access to wealth in the US, like people who are really phenomenally wealthy. But things like
Hmm.
Coronado Capital, Rising Tide Capital, there's some really important stuff going on. And there's people working in the US, probably up here too, I just haven't come across them, who are helping to talk to investors. Um, and especially the sort of new round of investors. So the people who are in their 20s and 30s who inherited money and didn't really expect to suddenly have wealth. And talking to them about how to use that wealth to invest in their beliefs and their values, rather than just putting it into the tar sands or, something that they don't really believe in.
challenges and barriers do you face in your work, and how are you overcoming them?
I think the biggest challenge in social finance right now really is what I'd mentioned, which is the although more and more investors are changing their strategy, and there are more and more investors who are looking for a little bit of return, but also knowing that their money is going to the change that they want to see. But overall, the wealth industry is slow to change. And so I think we need, I think we need some of that is changing regulations. And if people are portfolio managers, what they're allowed to do and recommend. And then I think also recognizing that the risk parameters that are used for investment are really outdated. So in my opinion, these farmers that we are working with who are selling direct to customers, so they're often, or they're selling at a CSA, or they're selling to local independent stores, so very much building the local economy. They are also the most climate resilient. So our farmers, we require them to have positive environmental benefits, and it's really easy for them. They're managing their water, and we've invested in one farm that had a damp part of their field, and we invested in them building a wetland, so now they can gather the water there, use it to irrigate. Simple things like that. These are regenerative farmers who are mixing livestock, so producing their own composted manure, growing a diversity of crops. So if they have a failure of the lettuce, they've still got callaloo. So it's to me, this is a resilient type of farming, and it's actually much, and because people are so passionate, these are fantastic investments. And I think conventional financial institutions and the banks are really stuck in kind of an old understanding of small businesses. So I mean, we're lucky because we have these amazing things to invest in that other people are leaving behind, and I think one of the things that is I think it's starting to be recognized in the bigger financial institutions, but the default rate on social finance funds is actually really low compared to conventional finance. Ours is overall, I think it's 3%, which is really low. And that's during a pandemic, right? So, but at least I would say the majority of, we've had like a little handful, less than a handful of defaults, but I'd say the majority were tied to the pandemic. So restrictions and against operations. So these are the best investments I think around if you want to invest in food and farming. And so that's a shift that really, this is a policy and regulatory in some ways shift that needs to happen.
And so what would you say are some of the key priorities right now?
Our priorities right now are really building capital for Black and BIPOC farmers to access the land securely, to grow food for this and future generations. I think that the Fair Finance Fund and all, social finance should all feel responsibility to address the racism in lending, which has been proven over and over again. It's prevalent, and giving barriers to entrepreneurs, good BIPOC entrepreneurs, Black farmers, to be able to get access to housing, access to the farmland they need, access to tools they need. So all of that seems to me to be obvious, that's social finance is here to address that, and to build equity and justice in the economy. It's a perfect tool for that. So that seems to me to be the priority.
Thank you. Exactly. And how do you feel about the future of the future of finance in Canada? Let's say the social finance in Canada.
Well, I think we don't have any choice but to change the way we do financing. Um, so, so I'm going to be hopeful about it. I think because we have to do this, we have to make this change. We've got climate crisis upon us. We have to have a food and agriculture system which is sustainable, which lasts to the next generations, where people have equity to be able to pass it on to the next generation. So I think, and I think given the fact that there is such a large 75% of existing Canadian farmers are due to retire, in the next 5 to 10 years. So we're in this a transformative moment in agriculture, which it to me also sort of opens up this possibility of not only being hopeful, but actually getting the transformation that we need. So I think we're in a particularly important moment. It's always been important to do this kind of work, but this is especially, a whole bunch of things are coming together to make it a really good moment to push this forward.
Exactly. Okay. And are there any regulatory barriers to your work and potential proposed legislative remedies? So I know we were talking about some barriers before, but any
Yeah.
potential proposed legislative remedies?
Uh, it's sort of in relationship to finance or in relationship to food and agriculture.
Um, I would say in relationship to food and agriculture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think the biggest one is I an outdated kind of regulation which was meant to prevent uh, wealthy homeowners from buying large pieces of farmland and taking them out of farming. So that's a severance policy.
Right.
It was meant to keep farmland at a large enough size that wealthy people wouldn't go in and build a big mansion and go and live there. It hasn't worked. Um,
Hmm.
for a number of reasons, partly that the definition of a farm from the Canada Revenue is only 7,000 a year in income. So it makes it quite easy for somebody to sort of meet that and buy a piece of farmland, but not really keep it in farming. So we need um, I've actually written a book called Belongings, which looks at a whole bunch of different ways that we could address this
Hmm.
in policy. But I think the sort of obvious one is really to to the whole point is that we want to maintain the farmland as farmland. So there have to be more um, penalties for conversion of farmland. And there's an example I really like from Maryland in the United States. And I don't know if they still do this, but they used to um, people could buy farmland and they could commit to keeping it in farming, which housing developers will do because they're looking forward to someday they're going to take it out of farming, but maybe this isn't the right moment. Um, in Maryland, if you take something out of farmland that you bought maybe 5 or 10 years later, you still get fined the
Mm.
conversion penalty. So that would address some of the places where people have bought farmland. They've gone on leasing it back to the original farm owner,
Hmm.
but the long-term plan is to build housing. Um, so I think I think we just need more policies like that really make it not worth it to take beautiful farmland and turn it into housing. We need housing, let's
Right.
just not do it on the places that could be producing food. I think
Very true.
the other bit I would say is kind of some of the work that has been done in Hamilton, because Hamilton is um, what's called a single tier municipality, so that they don't have as many layers of policy that they're answerable to. So they were
Hmm.
able to allow urban farming. They have a 10-acre farm downtown. They're able to allow um, on-farm processing and things like that the farmers will have been telling everybody for years that we need. but Hamilton was able to make those changes more quickly. So that's the kind of change, like Toronto right now isn't even included in the census of agriculture, but you and I know there's tons of food being grown here, right?
That's
So,
right.
and so that's some of it. Why not do more to like what Hamilton did to allow the peri-urban farming and in near urban farming, so that people and some of that is there's a couple of reasons for that. Some of the best farmland is right around these cities because that's where it grew up.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking at like the Black Creek farmers that or the people who are farming at Downsview, um,
Yeah.
Deeper
Checking along.
Roots, and
Yes.
some of those awesome farms, Zawadi farms, they're they're they have an established market and it's in the city, and they need to be able to farm within a reasonable distribution relationship to the city.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bunch of adjustment that should be made around there. And this is not just pie in the sky. If you look at other, if you look at Havana in Cuba, you look at cities around Europe, it's very common for urban growing to be an important um, activity in a city. It's just that we've got policies that make it quite hard.
Right,
So let's
right.
fix it.
Exactly. Bottom line, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's easy.
Wow.
Just
Yeah, that's it. Wow, I lived in Hamilton too. I didn't know that. I gotta, check that out. The 10-acre
yeah,
farmland
it's
that they have
called
out.
McQuest. Yeah. I probably have
Mm,
to edit this. Is McQueston or McQuestern?
okay.
And
Okay. Wonderful.
it has it's food security focused. So
Right.
it has some of the great stuff that happens at Black Creek. It's got some of the similarities to that.
Similarities. Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. And what would you say the ultimate goal, and what, as far as the ultimate goal and what does success look like to you and your colleagues? So what would you say is the ultimate goal and success as far as what's been achieved so far in the future, you'd say?
Well, the big picture to me is that anybody who wants to grow food or be a food entrepreneur is able to do it and can get the capital they need and access to the infrastructure they need, without having to struggle with a lot of sort of random barriers. Um, and then I think the even bigger picture is that Canada finally acts on the right to food and that we don't have this wealthy country with double digit hunger.
That's right.
I just keep coming back to that, but it's just like it's
Hmm.
appalling. So we have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
just stop that. And there, we have
absolutely.
people who want to farm and grow food that is culturally appropriate for the communities they want to grow for, and
Hmm.
and then people who want that food, like it doesn't seem like a hard equation.
Cohesion. That's right. That's right. Hmm. Oh my goodness. Okay. And do you have any closing thoughts or any calls to action at this time?
Uh, well, that's the calls to action, I think, are for there are lots of creative thinkers out there right now working on the farmland issue. There's a research from the Agriculture Project. Um, there's community land trusts. There's some amazing work going on. So I think the call to action is for as many flowers as possible to bloom to solve this problem.
Absolutely. Wow, this has actually been an amazing interview. So powerful, so needed. I can't wait for this to get on YouTube to really, amplify the work and amplify the voice that you have really permeated within the community. And I really appreciate it. We all appreciate it. Setsi appreciates you so much. And we want to thank you so much once again for your leadership, your diligence. It's not easy work, but the work must go on, and food, clothing, and shelter. That's what I say. I mean, those are the
Yeah.
necessities. So it shouldn't be something like you're saying with a high, rate of poverty and not having food access and, culturally appropriate food. I mean, these things should just be a basic need within our rich country, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
I mean, I appreciate the work you all are doing so much, and I know it's hard, and you just don't give up. So,
Right.
yeah, I'm I'm one of your biggest fans.
Amazing. Appreciate you. All right. So, and we will close the way we began with this interview by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So once again, Sally, thank you so much. I appreciate your time
Thank
and
you so
look
much.
forward to the many meetings that we have together.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matt.
All right, take care, Sally.
All
Have
right,
a
take
great
care.
day.
Bye.
Okay, bye bye.